On a lonely, fiery night, an ordinary man's life changes forever when he pulls a mysterious woman from the wreckage of a burning car. She is unlike anyone he has ever known, calm, intelligent, and bound by a hidden world with rules he cannot yet understand. What begins as a single act of courage becomes the start of an unbreakable bond, drawing him into a life filled with subtle dangers, strange guidance, and the quiet power of connection. In a world where the ordinary and the extraordinary collide, he must navigate unseen forces, learn to trust the impossible, and choose whether to embrace a bond that could alter his fate forever. It was close to midnight when he saw the fire. The road was almost empty, stretching long and dark through fields and broken trees. He was tired after a long shift, his mind focused only on getting home. The radio played softly, and the headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the night. Then, far ahead, an orange glow flickered where there should have been nothing at all. At first, he thought it was a small roadside fire, but as he drove closer, the glow grew brighter, sharper, and unstable. Smoke drifted across the road, thick and black. His foot lifted from the accelerator without thinking. A car had crashed hard into the guardrail. The front end was crushed, metal twisted like paper. Flames climbed from the engine area, snapping and hissing. Heat rolled into the air in heavy waves. There were no other vehicles stopped. No sirens, just fire, smoke, and silence. He pulled over and stepped out, his heart pounding. Every sensible thought told him to stay back. Fires could explode. Fuel tanks could burst. But then he heard a weak sound, almost lost in the crackle of flames. A soft, broken breath. Someone was still inside. He didn't stop to think anymore. He ran toward the wreck. The heat hit him immediately, stinging his face and arms. Smoke burned his lungs. He covered his mouth with his sleeve and leaned into the broken driver's side door. It was jammed shut. He tried the passenger side. The door groaned but opened just enough. Inside, slumped against the seat, was a woman. At first glance, she looked unconscious. Her head was tilted, dark hair falling across her face. But then her chest moved, slow and shallow. She was alive. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice rough. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. They were unlike any eyes he had ever seen. In the firelight, they reflected gold, sharp, and alert despite her condition. She looked at him, not with fear, but with focus, as if she knew exactly who he was, even though they had never met. The flames grew louder. Something popped in the engine, sending sparks into the air. He reached for her seatbelt. It was stuck. His hands shook as he fumbled with it, finally yanking it free. He slid one arm behind her back and the other under her knees. She was lighter than he expected. As he pulled her out, her hand suddenly closed around his wrist. Her grip was firm, not weak at all. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't understand. The sound wasn't any language he recognized. It was soft, urgent, and filled with meaning he couldn't grasp. "I've got you," he said, even though he didn't know why he said it. "You're safe." She held his wrist tighter for a second. Then her grip loosened. Her eyes stayed on his face until the moment they finally closed. He turned away from the wreck just as the fire surged higher. He staggered back, coughing, every step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached a safe distance, he lowered her to the ground, laying her gently on her side like he had seen in first aid videos. Only then did he really look at her. Her clothes were damaged, but not burned the way they should have been. Her skin was marked with soot, but strangely unharmed. And there was something else, small details that didn't fit. The shape of her ears beneath her hair. The sharpness of her features. The way she seemed peaceful, even now. He stepped back as the wreck exploded behind them, a loud blast that shook the ground. Fire shot into the sky. He flinched, heart racing. If he had waited even 10 more seconds, sirens finally wailed in the distance. He stayed where he was, kneeling beside her, until emergency vehicles arrived. Firefighters rushed past him toward the flames. Paramedics followed, checking the woman quickly and lifting her onto a stretcher. "Did you pull her out?" one of them asked. He nodded, still catching his breath. You saved her life, the medic said, already moving away. Police asked questions. He answered as best as he could. He gave his name, explained what he saw, what he did. They asked about the crash, about other passengers. There were none. No identification was found in the wreck. No plates that matched any records. Before the ambulance doors closed, he saw her again. For a brief moment, her eyes opened. She looked straight at him, past the chaos, past the flashing lights, and she smiled. It was small, tired, but certain. Then the doors shut. The road was cleared hours later. He drove home in silence, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The image of the fire replayed in his mind again and again. The sound of her voice, the feel of her hand around his wrist. That night, sleep wouldn't come easily. When it did, it brought strange dreams. Fire that didn't burn. Golden eyes watching from the dark. A voice calling him not by his name, but by something else. Something that felt old and important. Morning came, but the feeling didn't fade. At work, he was distracted. Small things went wrong and right in odd ways. A falling object missed him by inches. A sudden decision saved him time he didn't know he would need. He brushed it off as stress. By afternoon, he got a call from the hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact, the nurse said carefully. That's not possible, he replied. I don't even know her name. There was a pause. She asked for you, the nurse said. Specifically. He went after his shift ended, telling himself it was just to check if she was okay. The hospital room was quiet, sunlight spilling through the window. She sat up in the bed, alert and calm, as if nothing terrible had happened. When she saw him, her eyes brightened. You came, she said softly. Her voice was clear now, normal, almost. They said you asked for me, he replied. She nodded. You answered the call? I don't understand, he said honestly. She smiled again, that same certain smile. You will. As he stood there, unsure and uneasy, he felt a strange weight settle over him, not fear, not regret, but the sense that his life had quietly shifted direction on that burning road. The night he chose not to look away had not ended with the fire. It had only begun. He couldn't stop thinking about that night. Even after leaving the hospital, the image of the wrecked car, the flames, and her golden eyes stayed with him. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, calm despite everything. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. There was something unusual about her, something that made him uneasy and curious at the same time. The next morning, he tried to go about his routine, but it felt different. His apartment seemed smaller, quieter, and emptier. He kept glancing at the door, expecting her to appear, even though he had no reason to think she would. And yet, a feeling told him she might come back, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged to his life in a way he didn't understand. Then, unexpectedly, there was a knock. He opened the door and froze. She was standing there, fully dressed, looking completely unharmed. Her hair had been combed back neatly, and her clothes were simple but elegant, almost unusual in style. It wasn't the clothes of someone from a hospital or someone recovering from injuries. She smiled at him, calm and knowing, as if she had always been meant to be there. I came to see you, she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical. Why? Why here? He stammered. You're supposed to be in the hospital. They said you were recovering. They let me leave, she replied. I wanted to see you first. Her golden eyes studied him carefully, searching for something he couldn't name. There was confidence in her gaze. Certainty he found both comforting and intimidating. He stepped aside, letting her enter. His apartment suddenly felt crowded, though no one else was there. She moved slowly, observing everything. She didn't touch anything, but she noticed everything: the books on the shelf, the small plant on the windowsill, the mug still on the counter. It was as if she understood his life without anyone explaining it. Who are you? He finally asked, sitting down, unsure why he needed to know. I am someone who owes her life to you, she said. That is enough for now. Wait, he said, shaking his head. I saved you, yes, but that's it. I don't owe you anything. She tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but serious. In my world, when someone's life is saved, a bond is created. It is not optional. It is not broken. You belong to me in the sense that I will always protect you, and you will always be part of my path. He blinked, not understanding. Your world. She smiled faintly. Yes. There are things hidden from ordinary people. I belong to a community that lives quietly, alongside humans, but apart from them. We follow rules that humans cannot see. Saving my life has drawn you into our world, whether you want it or not. He laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but the seriousness in her eyes told him otherwise. Something deep in his chest tightened, a mix of fear and fascination. This sounds impossible, he said. It may seem impossible, she said softly, but it is true. And now that you have saved me, you are bound. Not by force, but by life itself. You will notice changes. Small at first, then larger. The world you knew will shift, and you will understand why I am here. He felt a chill run down his spine. Her words weren't threats, but they carried weight. The night she had been pulled from the fire was only the beginning. Something in the way she looked at him, the way she spoke, told him that life after this moment would never be the same. Over the next few days, he noticed subtle changes. Strangers seemed to give him more attention than usual. Small accidents that might have harmed him didn't happen, almost as if the universe had adjusted around him. At first, he thought it was coincidence, but the more he observed, the less he could explain it. She was always nearby. Sometimes he would glance up, and she would be watching from a distance, calm and silent. Other times, she would appear in places he didn't expect, standing quietly, her golden eyes focused on him. She never interfered in his daily life in an obvious way. But it was clear she was there for protection, waiting, guiding. One evening he decided he had to confront her. Why me? He asked. Why not someone else? Why not anyone else on that road? She looked at him with an expression that seemed almost sad. Because you did not hesitate. In that moment, you acted without fear, without thought of reward or recognition. You chose to save a life simply because it needed saving. That is rare. That is why you were chosen. Chosen. For what? He asked, the unease in his voice growing. For a bond that cannot be broken, she said. You do not yet understand it. You will in time. And you will see that this bond is not just about obligation. It is about life, protection, and trust. The moment you reached into the fire, you became part of something larger than yourself. You will notice it soon. Days passed, and he could not shake the feeling that his life was under a new current he could not control. She remained near, silently observing, helping in ways he could not name. When his car broke down unexpectedly, it was fixed before he knew the problem existed. When a minor accident threatened a friend of his, something happened to prevent it at the last moment. Small things, almost invisible. But enough to make him start paying attention. He began to realize that her presence was not random. She had followed him out of the hospital for a reason. And though he didn't understand why, he felt a growing sense of safety in her presence. But alongside it was a creeping unease. It was clear her world was hidden from him, and he had stepped across its boundaries without choice. One night, he finally asked, "Are you human?" She paused. Her expression softened. "I am as human as those who live only in their world. But my kind is rare. We are careful, hidden. You may notice things that seem unusual, but do not be alarmed. I do not mean to frighten you. My purpose is to protect, to guide, and to maintain the bond created that night." He nodded, though he understood very little. Her words did not calm him. They made him more aware of the strangeness surrounding her, and of the way his life was changing. The world he had known as routines, his understanding of normal life was shifting, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Even so, despite his fear, he felt a strange pull toward her. Not because she demanded it, because of the way she had saved him from situations he hadn't even realized could be dangerous. The way her presence seemed to ease troubles, protect people, and create unexpected order. It was as if life itself recognized her influence and adjusted accordingly. In quiet moments, he would watch her. She moved with grace and purpose, noticing details he would never see, responding to situations before they became problems. And though her world was hidden, her connection to him was undeniable. He could not explain why, but he felt that somehow, without choice or understanding, his life had been intertwined with hers. Then, one evening, she spoke quietly while sitting across from him. "You may feel afraid. You may wish to step away. But the bond is real. It is not about control. It is about life itself. I will not harm you. I only ask that you see the truth." He swallowed hard. He wanted to believe her, but fear and disbelief wove together in his chest. "What truth?" he asked. She smiled faintly, and for the first time he noticed warmth in her eyes. That life is fragile, that choices matter, that in saving one person, the world can change for both of you. That is the bond. That is why I am here. And in that moment, he understood something. Whatever had begun on that burning night was not finished. It would grow. It would challenge him. And whether he wanted it or not, it was part of her world now. The days ahead promised more questions, more changes, and the undeniable certainty that nothing would ever be ordinary again. He began noticing things he could not explain. Small incidents, almost like coincidences, but too consistent to be random. He would drop a cup and it would land safely, or a car would swerve just enough to miss him when he wasn't even paying attention. At first, he thought it was luck. Then he realized she was there, somewhere close, always observing, quietly influencing outcomes in ways he could not see. It happened gradually. One afternoon, while walking to the grocery store, a man carrying a large stack of boxes tripped right in front of him. The boxes would have fallen on him, but they shifted just enough to slide past without hitting him. He looked around, heart racing, and saw nothing unusual. But later, when he told her about it, she smiled faintly and said, "I was there." He asked, confusion mixed with unease. "Nearby watching, making sure nothing happened to you?" She said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He wanted to believe it was coincidence, but the events kept happening. Streetlights seemed to turn green when he approached intersections. Trains slowed for him without explanation. Even minor accidents he didn't witness seemed to resolve themselves before causing harm. And always, somewhere nearby, she was present, calm, and focused. Watching him with those piercing golden eyes, it was unnerving. He had never believed in fate or destiny, but now he felt pulled by something unseen, guided in small but undeniable ways. And she never forced him, never demanded anything. Her presence was silent, protective, always near. And it left him both relieved and tense. One evening, while they sat together on a quiet park bench, he finally asked the question that had been growing in his mind for days. "Are you following me? All the time?" Her expression softened. "I am near, yes. Watching, protecting, not because I command you, but because the bond exists. That night, in the fire, a life was saved, and now we are connected. I am here because I promised silently to be." He ran his hands through his hair, frustration mixing with confusion. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even understand what was happening then. Why me? Why this bond? Why not let it end?" She looked at him steadily, unshaken by his agitation. "Because it is not about choice at first. It is about survival and honor. And now, as you see, you are learning. The bond is not punishment. It is a connection that protects and teaches. You will see it in time." He stared at her, trying to process the weight of her words. Her calm certainty clashed with his doubts, but deep down, he sensed a truth he could not explain. Something in her presence reassured him. Even while his mind screamed that this was impossible, the next days brought more subtle lessons. When he walked alone at night, shadows seemed less threatening. When he faced situations that could have caused conflict at work, something seemed to guide him to the right words, the right decisions. He began to notice patterns, small but consistent. Every time he felt danger or uncertainty, She appeared in some form, not always directly, but nearby, a silent guardian. It wasn't just protection. It was guidance, and it left him unsettled. He didn't want to admit it, but a part of him began to trust her instincts. Even before he understood them, one afternoon, a sudden incident tested him in a way he had not expected. A fire broke out in a small shop near his apartment. People panicked, and smoke spread quickly through the street. He froze, unsure of what to do. Then he felt her hand brush against his shoulder, not physically, but like a presence in the room. His fear shifted to clarity. He guided the people outside, stayed calm, and helped an elderly woman escape through a side door. Later, as the fire trucks arrived, he realized he had not panicked once. "Did you?" he began, unsure how to ask. She nodded slightly. "I was near. I helped you stay focused." It was unnerving to realize she had influenced him without his knowledge, but he could not deny it. That night, as he walked home, he understood a truth he could not ignore. The bond was real. Not magical in the way stories describe, but real in its effect. Her presence altered the world around him in ways small but undeniable. Still, questions remained. He wanted answers, clarity. One night he confronted her as they walked along the river. "What happens now? If we are bound, like you say, if this bond exists, then what? What am I supposed to do?" She looked at him with eyes that seemed to see into his mind. "Live, observe, learn, trust. The bond is not control. It is protection. It is guidance. Over time, you will understand. But for now, you must let it exist, and let me help you navigate it." He stopped, frustrated. "I don't know if I can trust something I don't understand." "You don't need to understand everything," she replied softly. "Only that the bond exists, and that it is here for you, not against you. Trust grows with time. Awareness grows with experience. You are learning faster than you think." He sighed, walking on in silence. He couldn't deny the strange comfort her presence brought him, even as it unnerved him. Her bond was invisible, but undeniable. He could no longer imagine life without her somewhere near. Days turned into weeks, and the bond grew more apparent. Small miracles became regular. Problems at work solved themselves almost before they arose. Accidents were avoided. Danger seemed to bend away from him. He noticed she was always nearby, sometimes at a distance, sometimes closer, but always vigilant. And every time he thought he might walk away or deny it, some unseen force nudged him back to reality. He was already connected. She was not controlling him, but she was influencing the world around him in subtle, protective ways. She taught him patience, observation, and awareness. Slowly he began to realize that the bond was not a chain, but a partnership, a strange, silent partnership born from fire, trust, and the choice to save a life. One quiet evening, he finally accepted a simple truth. He could not deny her presence, her effect, or the subtle guidance she offered. The bond was real, and while he did not fully understand it, he could no longer pretend it did not exist. He was drawn into her world whether he wanted to be or not, and it was already changing him. He looked at her then, standing near the riverbank, golden eyes reflecting the water. She did not speak, only watched, calm and steady. And for the first time, he realized that perhaps he was not afraid anymore. The bond was strange, mysterious, and undeniable, but it was not harmful. It was protection, guidance, and connection. And slowly, he began to trust it. Life had changed in ways he could not have imagined. The bond she had spoken of was no longer a mystery, it was a reality he could feel every day. Her presence lingered near him, not as a shadow, but as a quiet guiding force. Sometimes he sensed her before he saw her. Sometimes she appeared just when he needed her most. And though he had begun to trust her, the realization that her world existed alongside his left him uneasy. It began subtly at first. Strange figures appeared in places he frequented. People who seemed ordinary at first glance had eyes that lingered too long, movements that were too precise. Once, while walking home, a man approached him, friendly at first, but the subtle tension in his stance made him pause. He turned to look for her, and she appeared silently at his side, calm and composed. The man stopped, glanced at her, and turned away as if obeying some unspoken rule. She explained later that her people were watching. They know of the bond, she said, and they have opinions. Some believe it should be severed, others that it should be enforced. They watch, and sometimes they test. You may notice it, or you may not. That is their choice, not yours. He frowned, unsure whether to feel alarmed or reassured. Test. What kind of tests? Small ones, sometimes. To see if the bond is true? To see if the connection can withstand challenges, she replied. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were serious. Nothing will harm you if I am near. But you must understand the weight of this bond. It is not casual. It is life-altering. The first real test came unexpectedly. One evening, while walking through a quiet street, he felt a sudden surge of unease. Shadows moved strangely along the walls. A figure stepped out, tall and silent, blocking his path. The figure did not speak, but raised a hand in warning. He froze, panic rising in his chest. Then she appeared beside him. Her presence was calm, and the tension in the air shifted immediately. The figure hesitated, then slowly stepped back. Without a word, she guided him down a side alley, away from danger. He tried to speak, to thank her, but no words came. His chest still raced. What was that? He asked once they were safe. A test, she said simply. To see if you could trust the bond. To see if you could act with clarity under pressure. You passed. He laughed nervously, still shaken. Passed? I didn't do anything. You handled it. Shh, not entirely, she replied. Your calmness, your willingness to follow instinct and remain aware, helped. The bond works both ways. You provide the intention. I provide the guidance. Together, we act. The days that followed were filled with similar challenges. Small accidents, potential conflicts, and sudden threats appeared almost like lessons. Each time, she guided him, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly. Slowly, he began to notice patterns. The world he had known was no longer predictable, but he could navigate it with her help. Her presence was not always visible. Sometimes he sensed her in moments of intuition. A sudden thought guided him to take a different route home. A fleeting feeling stopped him from answering a dangerous phone call. Each instance reinforced the reality of the bond, though it still felt surreal. One day, a more serious challenge arrived. At work, a disagreement between colleagues escalated into an argument that threatened to become physical. He felt a surge of tension, his heart racing. Normally, he might have walked away, avoided the confrontation, but something inside him shifted. He remembered her guidance, her calm focus, and he stepped forward, using words she had not given him. But instincts he had learned from her presence, he diffused the situation. The colleagues backed down, frustrated but unharmed. Afterwards, he turned to see her watching from a distance, her expression unreadable. She nodded slightly, and he understood he had succeeded. You are learning faster than I expected, she said later, when they were alone. The bond strengthens with experience. You see not only danger, but opportunity. You act with awareness. That is why the bond exists, not to control, but to create balance. Balance. The word stayed with him. He realized that her guidance was not only protection, but also a way of teaching. Him to act thoughtfully in situations he might have previously ignored, he felt gratitude, even as unease lingered. This world she belonged to was hidden, complex, and filled with rules he could not yet fully comprehend. One evening, while walking near the river, he finally asked the question that had been forming in his mind for weeks. Why me? Why involve me in all of this? Why not someone from your world? Her golden eyes reflected the fading sunlight. Because you acted without thought for reward or recognition. You chose to save a life simply because it was the right thing to do. That choice revealed the strength of your character. That is rare in your world. The bond exists to protect and guide those who can honor it. You can. That is why you were chosen. He nodded slowly, still unsure if he fully understood, but accepting the reality. Her words were not commands. They were explanations guiding him to a deeper understanding. The more he trusted the bond, the more he noticed the subtle influence of her presence in his life. But with trust came responsibility. One night, while walking home, he saw a car veer dangerously close to a child playing near the curb. Before he could react, she appeared beside him, guiding his hand to catch the child safely. The moment passed in seconds, but the impact stayed with him. He realized that the bond was not just about his life, but about protecting others as well. You see, she said afterward, the bond is not ownership. It is responsibility. You are connected to me, and through me, to the wider balance. Every action matters. He understood then that his life had irrevocably changed. What had started as a single act of bravery, the night of the fire, had grown into a connection that influenced every part of his life. He was not alone anymore. She was near, always guiding, protecting, teaching. And with her guidance came challenges, lessons, and responsibilities he had never imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the pattern continued. He faced tests he did not always understand, but each time he learned something new about himself, about the bond, and about her world. He began to anticipate her presence, to rely on it, to respect it. Fear remained, but it was tempered with trust and understanding. One night, as they watched the city lights from a quiet rooftop, he finally spoke what had been on his mind for a long time. I don't understand everything, but I trust you, I think. I think I am ready to accept the bond, whatever it means. She turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. Acceptance is the first step. Understanding comes later. You do not need to know everything to honor the bond. You only need to act with awareness, respect, and intention. That is enough for now, he nodded, feeling a strange relief. The weight of the unknown remained, but it was lighter now. He realized that life after the fire had been unpredictable, strange, and often frightening, but also richer, fuller, and more meaningful. The bond was not a chain. It was a connection, invisible but powerful, guiding him through a world he could not always see. And for the first time, he felt ready to embrace it, to learn from it, and to face whatever challenges might come, knowing she would be there. The nights ahead promised more tests, more lessons, and perhaps dangers he could not yet imagine. But he understood now that the bond was not punishment or control, it was guidance, protection, and connection. And for the first time, he welcomed it. Time moved differently now. Every day felt sharper, more vivid, as if the world itself had changed after that night of fire. The bond she had spoken of no longer felt like a mystery or a burden, it was part of him. He could sense her presence even when she was not beside him. Her guidance had become a quiet rhythm in his life, teaching him awareness, patience, and trust. Yet despite the comfort it brought, there remained a question he could no longer ignore: choice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and purple, he found himself walking alone along a quiet street. The city was settling into night, lights flickering on, streets soft with the hum of evening activity. He paused at a small park, the same place where he had first begun to realize the bond's influence in his life. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of flowers from nearby gardens. He felt her presence before he saw her. It was a calm, steady warmth, a reassurance that had become familiar and comforting. "You came," he said softly, though he knew she had always been near. "I am always near," she replied gently. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dim light, reflecting the last rays of the sun. "But tonight, the choice is yours." He looked at her, confused. "Choice? I thought that the bond, it's already set, isn't it?" She shook her head slightly. "The bond exists because of what you did. It is real, and it shapes your life. But it is not meant to control you. You can honor it freely, or you can step away forever. That is why I'm here now, to let you decide." His heart pounded. All the days, weeks, and experiences, the near accidents, the strange guidance, the sense of safety. The lesson she had quietly taught him culminated in this single moment. He realized he had grown accustomed to her presence, even dependent on it in ways he had not understood. And yet, the idea of being tied to something he did not fully comprehend was frightening. "What happens if I step away?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "You would return to your life," she said, "but the bond would end. My guidance, my protection, everything tied to it, would no longer be connected to you. You would be free, but you might lose more than you realize." He considered the words. The bond had not only protected him, it had shaped him, guided him, opened his eyes to things he had never noticed before. It had helped him navigate dangers he didn't even understand. And in return, he had learned awareness, responsibility, and trust. The bond was not about control. It was about connection, life, and growth. He thought back to the night of the fire, the moment he had reached into the flames without hesitation. The golden-eyed woman in his arms, the way her hand had gripped his wrist, and the words she had whispered, words he could not understand but still remembered. That act had started something extraordinary. He realized that accepting the bond was not about losing freedom. It was about choosing to honor a life intertwined with another. "I think I understand now," he said quietly. "The bond isn't about ownership. It's about choice, isn't it?" She nodded, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "Yes. The bond exists because life was saved. It grows because of trust and respect. You are free to accept it fully, or to let it end. That choice and that understanding is yours alone." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over him. The streets around him seemed quieter, the world holding its breath. He realized that in every moment since that fire, he had already been living with the bond, learning from it, adjusting to it, relying on it in ways he had not noticed. To reject it now would be to undo everything he had experienced. "I choose to honor it," he said finally, his voice steady. "Not because I am forced, but because I want to. I choose to be part of this bond with you." Her eyes softened, a warmth spreading across her features. Then the bond continues, stronger than before. Not as a chain, but as a connection. We are linked by choice, trust, and understanding. You are not under obligation, you are part of it freely. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him since that night. The uncertainty, the fear, and the awe of her presence combined into a steady calm. He realized that the bond was not about ownership or control, it was about partnership, guidance, and mutual respect. Days turned into weeks, and life continued, but now with a different understanding. He noticed small things he had missed before, her subtle ways of guiding him, the way she could sense danger before it arrived, the quiet lessons hidden in everyday moments. He appreciated her presence not as a shadow over his life, but as a source of strength, protection, wisdom. The world around him no longer felt random or chaotic. With her guidance, he learned to anticipate challenges, respond thoughtfully, and act with awareness. He began to notice the effects of the bond in small, meaningful ways, the safety of strangers, the resolution of problems before they became crises, and the sense of calm that came with knowing he was never truly alone. One evening, as they walked through the city together, he realized how much he had changed. The man who had hesitated before danger, who had once been ordinary and unaware, had grown more mindful, more capable, and more aware of the world around him. He looked at her, and for the first time he truly understood the depth of the bond. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." She smiled softly, her golden eyes reflecting the city lights. "The thanks belongs to both of us. You saved my life, and I have guided yours. The bond is stronger because of your choices, your trust, and your willingness to see beyond what you understood. That is the true meaning of connection." He nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and peace. The world was no longer ordinary, but it was richer, fuller, and more meaningful. Danger still existed, as it always would, but he no longer feared it. The bond was not a restriction, it was a partnership, a connection that shaped his life in ways he could never have imagined, and for the first time, he looked forward to the future. Whatever challenges came, he knew he would face them with awareness, trust, and guidance. He was not alone. He was part of something extraordinary, a connection born from a single act of courage, now strengthened by choice, understanding, and mutual respect. As the city lights flickered and the night settled around them, he walked beside her, feeling the quiet certainty of the bond. Life would continue, unpredictable and full of challenges, but he was ready. He had chosen, freely, to honor the bond. And in that choice, he had found strength, peace, and a connection that would last a lifetime. The fire that had started it all was long gone, but its memory lived on not as destruction, but as the beginning of a journey, a bond, and a life intertwined in ways he could never have imagined. And as he walked beside her, he knew that whatever came next, he would face it together, connected not by obligation but by trust, understanding, and the choice to stand side by side.